Take Massachusetts Avenue, Alexander instructed his driver, Gerald, who had been with him for 15 years. The expressway will be gridlocked with this weather. Yes, sir, Gerald replied, navigating the luxury vehicle through streets that were rapidly emptying as pedestrians fled for shelter. Alexander returned his attention to the tablet, his mind already calculating how he would structure the acquisition of the medical technology startup his team had been eyeing for months. At 45, Alexander had built Reed Investments from a small family office into one of the most respected private equity firms on the East Coast. His life operated with the precision of the Swiss timepiece on his wrist. Methodical, predictable, and exceedingly valuable. The Bentley slowed to a crawl as they approached an intersection where the traffic lights had malfunctioned, their normal rhythm replaced by an urgent flashing red. Through the rain-streaked window, Alexander noticed a figure huddled in the recessed doorway of a closed bookstore. Something about the way the person was hunched over caught his attention, protective rather than defeated. Gerald, pull over for a moment, Alexander said, surprising himself with the instruction. Sir, Gerald questioned, already scanning for a safe place to stop in the torrential conditions. Just there, by the bookstore. The Bentley eased to the curb, its wipers fighting a losing battle against the downpour. Alexander peered through the window, now able to see that the figure was a young woman, perhaps in her early 20s, with a small bundle clutched tightly against her chest. Her clothes were soaked through, her dark hair plastered to her face. But what struck Alexander most was how she positioned her body, curved protectively around whatever she held. For reasons he couldn't articulate, Alexander reached for his umbrella and opened the car door. Sir, shall I accompany you? Gerald asked, concern evident in his voice. No, I'll just be a moment, Alexander replied, stepping out into the deluge. The rain immediately assaulted him, the expensive wool of his Brioni suit offering little protection against nature's fury. He approached the woman cautiously, not wanting to frighten her. As he drew closer, the bundle in her arms shifted slightly, and Alexander realized with a jolt that it was an infant, carefully wrapped in what appeared to be a worn jacket. Excuse me, he said, raising his voice to be heard over the storm. The woman's head snapped up, her eyes wide with a mixture of fear and defiance. She was younger than he'd initially thought, with delicate features sharpened by what looked like months of hardship. She pulled the baby closer to her chest, a mama bear protecting her cub. I'm not going to hurt you, Alexander continued, extending his umbrella to cover them both. You shouldn't be out in this weather, especially with a child. We're fine, she replied, her voice stronger than her appearance suggested. The store owner just asked us to move along, that's all. We'll find somewhere else. The baby made a small sound, and the woman adjusted her hold, revealing a tiny face with closed eyes, miraculously dry despite the conditions. How old? Alexander asked, nodding toward the infant. The woman hesitated before answering. 8 weeks. Alexander felt something unfamiliar stir within him, a discomfort that went beyond the rain soaking through his clothes. He had walked past countless homeless individuals in his life, occasionally dropping bills into cups or making annual donations to shelters that his accountant assured him were tax advantageous. But he had never stopped, never engaged, never really seen them as anything more than unfortunate statistics in a society that rewarded those who worked hard and made smart decisions. But a baby changed the equation. Whatever circumstances had brought this young woman to this doorway, the infant in her arms was blameless. What's your name? He asked. Another hesitation. Eliza. And this is Lily. I'm Alexander Reed. He waited for a flicker of recognition. His name regularly appeared in Boston Business Journal and occasionally in national publications, but saw none. Do you have somewhere to go tonight? Family? Friends? Eliza shook her head. The shelter on Cambridge Street is full. They said to come back tomorrow morning. Alexander thought of his home in Beacon Hill, a 5-bedroom townhouse where he lived alone since his divorce 3 years ago. The place was maintained to perfection by Mrs. Winters, his housekeeper of 20 years, but remained as cold and impersonal as a hotel suite despite her best efforts to make it feel like a home. What he did next surprised even himself. I have a house with several empty rooms, he said, reaching into his pocket and extracting a set of keys. It's dry, warm, and my housekeeper makes an excellent soup. Eliza's expression hardened. I don't need charity, and I definitely don't accept offers from strange men. Of course, Alexander replied, suddenly aware of how his offer must sound. I apologize. That was presumptuous. The baby, Lily, began to fuss, her tiny face scrunching up as she awoke to the sounds of the storm. Eliza tried to soothe her, whispering soft words that were swept away by the wind. The sight stirred something deep within Alexander, a memory of his younger sister whom he'd failed to protect when they were children, placed in separate foster homes after their parents' death. He had found her years later, too late to save her from the hardships that had ultimately claimed her life. Look, he said, I understand your hesitation, but this storm is supposed to get worse, and you need somewhere safe for Lily. He held out his business card along with the keys. This is who I am. You can call my office to verify. My housekeeper, Mrs. Winters, will be at the house. She's 67 and has grandchildren of her own. You'll be safe there. Eliza studied the embossed card, her expression unreadable. Why would you help us? You don't know me. It was a fair question, one Alexander wasn't entirely sure he could answer. His entire adult life had been built on calculated decisions, on measurable returns on investment. This impulsive offer defied his nature. Because I can, he finally said, and because that baby deserves a warm, dry place to sleep tonight. A taxi splashed by, sending a wave of water over the curb. Lily began to cry in earnest now, her wails piercing through the white noise of the storm. Alexander saw Eliza's resolve waver as she looked down at her child. My driver can take you? Alexander offered, gesturing to the Bentley. I'll call Mrs. Winters to expect you. There's a guest suite on the second floor with its own bathroom. You can lock the door from the inside if it makes you feel safer. And what do you want in return? Eliza asked, the question heavy with the weight of past experiences. Nothing, Alexander replied. Stay the night. Have a hot meal. If you want to leave in the morning, Gerald can drive you wherever you'd like to go. A crack of thunder punctuated his words, making Lily cry harder. Eliza looked down at her daughter, then back at Alexander. In her eyes, he could see the internal battle between survival instinct and maternal desperation. Just for tonight, she finally said. And I keep the keys. We leave if anything feels wrong. Alexander nodded. Absolutely. He guided them to the Bentley, where Gerald, ever the professional, opened the door without betraying any surprise at the unusual passengers. As Alexander helped Eliza into the back seat, he caught a glimpse of Lily's face, now calm as she gazed up at her mother with complete trust. Gerald, please take Ms. Eliza and Lily to the house. I'll call Mrs. Winters to prepare the guest suite. I'll catch a taxi to my dinner. Yes, sir, Gerald replied, closing the door once they were settled. Alexander watched as the Bentley pulled away from the curb, carrying the young woman and her baby toward his home. Standing alone in the rain, drenched to the skin, he felt strangely lightened, as though he had shed something heavy he hadn't realized he'd been carrying. He pulled out his phone to call Mrs. Winters, then hesitated. After a moment's reflection, he dialed a different number instead. James? Alexander, read here. I need to reschedule our dinner. Something unexpected has come up. He paused, listening to the response. Yes, tomorrow would be fine. And James? Bring those prospectuses on the medical charities we discussed. I think it's time we expanded our philanthropic portfolio. As he ended the call and finally hailed a taxi, Alexander couldn't explain the profound shift he felt. For years, he had measured his worth in dollars and cents, in acquisitions and returns. Yet in this moment, standing in the rain after giving his house keys to a complete stranger, he felt something that had eluded him throughout his successful career. A sense of genuine purpose. What Alexander couldn't possibly know as he climbed into the taxi was that his impulsive act of kindness was about to unravel secrets long buried and set in motion events that would transform not only Eliza and Lily's lives but his own as well. When Eliza arrived at Alexander's Beacon Hill townhouse, she had expected opulence. The man wore a watch that probably cost more than most people made in a year. What she hadn't expected was the overwhelming sense of emptiness that permeated the space. Mrs. Winters, a silver-haired woman with kind eyes and efficient movements, welcomed them without judgment. Mr. Reed called ahead. "The guest suite is ready, and I've prepared some soup and fresh bread. There's also a bassinet for the little one." "A bassinet?" Eliza questioned, adjusting Lily in her arms. "Mr. Reed instructed me to bring it down from the attic," Mrs. Winters explained. "It belonged to his sister many years ago." The revelation that Alexander had kept such a personal item surprised Eliza. The man who had handed her his house keys in the rain had seemed so detached, so clinical in his charity. The preservation of a family heirloom suggested depths she hadn't glimpsed. The guest suite was larger than any apartment Eliza had ever lived in, with a plush queen-sized bed, an ensuite bathroom with heated floors, and a sitting area where the promised bassinet waited. After Mrs. Winters showed her how to operate the various amenities and left them to settle in, Eliza sat on the edge of the bed, overwhelmed. "What do you think, Lily?" she whispered to her daughter, who was contentedly exploring her new surroundings with wide eyes. "Is this real?" For the first time in months, Eliza allowed herself a hot shower that lasted more than the strict 3-minute limit of the shelter. She dressed Lily in a clean onesie from her backpack, one of the few possessions she'd managed to keep, and marveled at how different her baby looked when not bundled against the cold. Mrs. Winters had left a tray of food outside the door. Steaming soup, warm bread, fresh fruit, and a glass of milk. A note indicated that baby formula and bottles were available if needed. Eliza ate ravenously, realizing she hadn't had a proper meal in days. After feeding Lily and settling her in the bassinet, Eliza explored the room, running her fingers over expensive fabrics and examining framed photographs. Most depicted Alexander at various business functions, always immaculately dressed, always slightly removed from those around him. One photo, however, stood out, a much younger Alexander with his arm around a teenaged girl with his same gray eyes. The frame was more worn than the others, as though it had been handled often. Eliza was studying this photo when a gentle knock came at the door. She tensed, instinctively moving toward Lily. "It's just me, Mrs. Winters," came the housekeeper's voice. "Mr. Reed is on the phone and would like to speak with you, if you're willing." Hesitantly, Eliza opened the door and accepted the cordless phone. "Hello?" she said cautiously. "Eliza." Alexander's voice was as measured as it had been in the rain. "I wanted to ensure you and Lily are comfortable." "Yes, thank you. It's more than we expected." "Good. Mrs. Winters will provide anything you need. I've taken a hotel room tonight to give you privacy." Eliza blinked in surprise. "This is your home. You didn't have to." "I rarely use most of the space anyway," he interrupted. "Mrs. Winters has instructions to assist you tomorrow as well. Take your time. There's no rush for you to leave." The casual generosity stunned Eliza. "Why are you doing this? You don't know anything about me." A pause stretched between them. "Sometimes we don't need reasons to help others, just opportunities," he finally said. "Get some rest, Eliza." After they hung up, Eliza couldn't sleep despite the luxurious comfort of the bed. Alexander's kindness defied her understanding of how the world worked. In her experience, people took. They rarely gave without expecting something in return. Morning came with sunshine streaming through windows that Mrs. Winters must have unshuttered while Eliza slept. Lily was awake but content, making soft cooing sounds in her bassinet. Mrs. Winters brought breakfast and, to Eliza's surprise, several bags of baby supplies, diapers, formula, clothes, and even a few toys. "Mr. Reed had these delivered this morning," she explained. "He also left this for you." She handed Eliza an envelope. Inside was a note and a prepaid debit card. "Eliza, these supplies should help with Lily's immediate needs. The card contains $5,000 for whatever else you might require. There is no obligation or expectation attached to this. It is simply meant to provide you with options. If you're interested, I've arranged an interview with the Reed Foundation's Community Outreach Program tomorrow at 10 a.m. The position includes flexible hours and on-site childcare. Mrs. Winters can provide details if you wish to know more." Alexander. Eliza stared at the card, then at the note. The amount was staggering to someone who had been counting pennies for months. More shocking was the job offer. Not charity, but an opportunity. "Did you know about this?" she asked Mrs. Winters. The older woman nodded. "Mr. Reed called me very early this morning. He was quite specific about the supplies for the baby." She hesitated before adding, "I've worked for Mr. Reed for 20 years, and I've never seen him act like this. He's always been generous with donations, but never personal." That afternoon, the doorbell rang. Mrs. Winters answered it and returned to the sitting room where Eliza was feeding Lily. "Mr. Reed is here," she announced. "He'd like to speak with you, but he says to tell you there's no pressure. He can come back another time." Eliza took a deep breath. "It's fine. Please ask him to come in." Alexander entered, looking different than he had in the rain. His suit was equally expensive, but there was a tentative quality to his movements, an uncertainty that hadn't been present before. "How are you both?" he asked, remaining near the doorway. "Better than we've been in a long time," Eliza admitted. "Thank you doesn't seem adequate." Alexander shook his head. "No thanks necessary." His eyes fell on Lily, and something in his expression softened. "May I?" Understanding his request, Eliza nodded, and Alexander approached, crouching down to look at the baby. Lily regarded him with solemn curiosity. "She has your eyes," he observed quietly. "Everyone says that," Eliza replied. "Mr. Reed." "Alexander, please." "Alexander, I can't accept this money. It's too much." He straightened up. "Consider it an advance on your salary. Then, if you decide to take the position, why would you offer me a job? You know nothing about my qualifications." Alexander moved to the window, looking out at the garden. "Our foundation works with people who have experienced homelessness. Your perspective would be valuable." He turned back to her. "But that's not the only reason." Something in his tone made Eliza hold Lily a little closer. "What is?" Alexander seemed to struggle with his words, unusual for a man who presumably gave speeches and led meetings regularly. "My sister, Emma," he finally said. "The bassinet was hers. She had a child when she was very young. She was alone, like you." Understanding began to dawn on Eliza. "What happened to them?" "Emma died of an overdose when her daughter was 2. The child went into the system. I tried to find her, but by the time I had the resources," he let the sentence hang unfinished. "I should have done more. I was focused on building my career, thinking I could help her better with money later. I was wrong." The revelation transformed the sterile perfection of the house in Eliza's eyes. It wasn't just a showcase of wealth. It was a mausoleum for lost chances. "I'm sorry," she said simply. Alexander nodded his acknowledgement. "When I saw you and Lily in the rain, it felt like—" He shook his head. "I'm not a superstitious man, but it felt like an opportunity to not make the same mistake twice." Eliza considered his words, looking down at Lily, who had fallen asleep in her arms. 6 months ago, she had been a nursing student with a promising future. Then came the unplanned pregnancy, the boyfriend who disappeared, the landlord who wouldn't renew her lease when she couldn't make rent, and the slow, terrifying slide into homelessness. Pride had kept her from reaching out to the few friends she had, shame from contacting her estranged parents. "The job," she said finally. "What exactly would I be doing?" "Helping coordinate support services for families transitioning from homelessness to stable housing. The hours are flexible, the pay is competitive, and as I mentioned, there's on-site childcare." He paused. "You would also be welcome to stay here until you find suitable housing. The East Wing has a separate entrance if you prefer more independence." The offer was incredible, too good to be true. Yet there was something in Alexander's eyes that made Eliza believe him. Not compassion exactly, but understanding. He knew what it was to lose someone, to feel responsible. "I don't want to be your redemption project," she said firmly. Alexander's laugh held no humor. "I assure you, my redemption would require far more than helping one mother and child." Eliza considered him for a long moment. "I'll take the interview," she decided, "but no promises beyond that. And I'll pay back the advance. whether I take the job or not. Fair enough. Alexander moved toward the door, then hesitated. There's a charity gala at the foundation tomorrow evening. If you're comfortable leaving Lily with Mrs. Winters for a few hours, you'd be welcome to attend. It might give you a better sense of our work. Eliza thought of the few clothes she had, none appropriate for what was surely a black tie affair. As if reading her mind, Alexander added, "There's a boutique on Newberry Street that could help with attire. Just give them my name." After he left, Eliza sat with the sleeping Lily, contemplating how completely her world had changed in less than 24 hours. From a rain-soaked doorway to a job interview and a charity gala invitation. It was surreal. Mrs. Winters appeared with tea. "If I may," she said, setting down the tray, "I've known Mr. Reed since he bought this house. He's a good man who has buried himself in work to avoid facing his past. What he's offering you isn't charity, it's connection. Something he's been missing for a very long time." Eliza looked up at the housekeeper. "And what would you advise me to do?" Mrs. Winters smiled gently. "I would advise you to remember that sometimes the most generous gift we can give another person is allowing them to help us." The next day, Eliza found herself in an elegant black dress she could never have afforded, entering a ballroom filled with Boston's elite. Alexander met her at the entrance, a flicker of surprise and something else, appreciation, in his eyes. "You came," he said simply. "I did," Eliza replied, "but I still have questions." Alexander offered his arm. "Then let's find somewhere quieter to talk." As he guided her through the crowd, Eliza noticed how people deferred to him, how they sought his attention. Yet he seemed detached from it all, going through practiced motions. Only when he spoke of the foundation's work did genuine passion enter his voice. They found a relatively secluded balcony overlooking the city lights. The rain had cleared, leaving the air fresh and cool. "Your interview is scheduled for tomorrow," Alexander began. "But there's something you should know first." Eliza tensed. Here it came. The catch, the expectation, the true cost of his generosity. "The foundation recently acquired a medical education scholarship program," he continued. "If you're interested in resuming your nursing studies, we could arrange it. Around your work schedule, of course." The offer knocked the breath from Eliza's lungs. Her abandoned dream, handed back to her by a stranger who had become something more in the span of 2 days. "Why?" she whispered. "Why would you do all this?" Alexander leaned against the balcony railing, his profile sharp against the night sky. "Because for the first time in years, I'm doing something that matters. Not just writing checks or making investments, but actually changing someone's life." He turned to face her. "Or perhaps you're changing mine." In that moment, Eliza understood that Alexander's generosity wasn't just about helping her and Lily. It was about healing something broken in himself, finding purpose beyond accumulation, connection beyond transactions. "I don't know if I can accept all this," she admitted. "You don't have to decide tonight," Alexander assured her. "Take the interview tomorrow. See if the foundation is a place you'd want to work. The rest can come later." As they returned to the gala, Eliza noticed Alexander differently. Not as a wealthy benefactor dispensing charity, but as a man seeking redemption through meaningful action. His generosity had surprised her, but perhaps it had surprised him even more, revealing a capacity for connection he had long suppressed. What neither of them could anticipate was how their unexpected alliance would soon be tested by revelations that would shake the foundations of both their lives. 3 months passed with remarkable swiftness. Eliza not only accepted the position at the Reed Foundation but excelled at it, bringing first-hand insight to their family support programs. She and Lily remained in Alexander's East Wing, which had been transformed from its previous sterility into a warm, lived-in space filled with baby toys and the subtle chaos that accompanies life with an infant. Alexander, to everyone's surprise, especially his board members, had begun spending less time at Reed Investments and more at the foundation. He regularly joined Eliza for lunch, often insisting on holding Lily while Eliza ate. The once reserved businessman who maintained careful distance from everyone now seemed comfortable with baby spit up on his custom suits and had mastered the art of one-handed report reading while rocking a fussy infant. Mrs. Winters observed these changes with quiet satisfaction, noting how Alexander now returned home for dinner most evenings rather than working until midnight. The house that had functioned as little more than an expensive hotel for years was finally becoming a home. Eliza had also begun taking night classes to complete her nursing degree, with Alexander often volunteering to watch Lily, an arrangement that initially raised Eliza's eyebrows but proved surprisingly successful. For a man who had never had children, Alexander displayed an instinctive understanding of Lily's needs, as though making up for lost time with the niece he had never known. On a crisp autumn evening, Eliza returned from class to find Alexander asleep on the living room sofa with Lily nestled securely on his chest, both breathing in perfect synchrony. The sight caused an unexpected tightness in her throat. This man, who had literally changed the trajectory of her life with a single impulsive act of kindness, had become something she never expected: family. She gently lifted Lily without waking Alexander and carried her daughter to the nursery they had created together. As she laid Lily in her crib, no longer the antique bassinet but a modern one Alexander had insisted on purchasing, Eliza reflected on how completely her life had transformed. From huddling in doorways during rainstorms to helping shape programs that assisted others in similar situations. From scrambling for diapers to planning for Lily's future education. When she returned to the living room, Alexander was awake, his hair uncharacteristically disheveled, his expression soft with residual sleep. "How was class?" he asked, stifling a yawn. "Fascinating. We covered pediatric assessment techniques." Eliza sat in the armchair across from him. "You didn't have to wait up." "I wanted to." He straightened, something in his manner shifting. "Actually, there's something I'd like to discuss with you." Eliza felt a flicker of unease. Despite all that had transpired between them, a part of her still expected the other shoe to drop, for this dream to reveal itself as temporary. "Is everything all right?" she asked cautiously. Alexander reached for a folder on the coffee table. "More than all right. I've been working on something for the foundation, a new initiative focused specifically on young parents in medical training." He handed her the folder. "I'd like your input before I present it to the board." Eliza opened the folder, scanning the proposal inside. "The Emma Reed Scholarship," she read aloud. "Named after my sister," Alexander explained. "It would provide comprehensive support, tuition, childcare, housing stipends, mentorship, everything a parent would need to complete their medical education without sacrificing their family's well-being." Eliza continued reading, impressed by the thoughtfulness of the program's design. "This is incredible, Alexander. It could help so many people like me." "That's the idea." He hesitated. "There's more. I've been thinking about formalizing our arrangement here." Eliza tensed. "What do you mean?" "I'd like to transfer the East Wing into your name," he said simply. "Make it legally yours and Lily's." The proposal was so unexpected that Eliza could only stare at him. "You can't be serious." "Entirely serious. This house is too large for one person, and you've brought life back into it. I've already spoken with my attorneys about subdividing the property." "Alexander, I can't accept something like that. It's too much." He leaned forward, his expression earnest. "Eliza, what you've done for me these past months is worth far more than real estate. You've reminded me what it means to have purpose beyond profit, to have a family." The word hung between them, weighted with implications neither had voiced. "I don't know what to say," Eliza finally responded. "You don't need to decide now. The paperwork will take months anyway." Alexander stood, moving to a cabinet where he kept important documents. "While we're discussing the future, there's something else I want to show you." He retrieved another folder, this one older and more worn. "I've been searching for my niece for years, using private investigators. There have been few leads until recently." Eliza set aside the scholarship proposal, recognizing the significance of this revelation. Alexander rarely spoke of his sister or her child, the pain still evidently raw despite the passage of time. "You found her?" Eliza asked gently. "Possibly." Alexander opened the folder, revealing photographs and documents. The trail led to a closed adoption in Connecticut. "The records are sealed, but my investigator managed to narrow it down to 3 possibilities." He spread several papers on the coffee table. "One is now living abroad. One is married with children in California. He pointed to the third document. And one was in the foster system until age 18, then disappeared from official records until recently registering for nursing classes in Boston. Eliza's heart began to pound as Alexander continued. Her name was changed by her adoptive family, but her birth date matches. And there's a distinctive birthmark mentioned in her early medical records. A small crescent shape behind her right ear. The room seemed to tilt around Eliza as she raised her hand unconsciously to the crescent-shaped mark behind her own ear. A feature she had always considered a quirk of genetics, never a clue to her origins. Alexander, she whispered, her voice barely audible. What was your sister's last name before she married? He looked up from the documents, his brow furrowed at the question. Donovan. Emma Donovan Reed. Why? Eliza's legs weakened beneath her as she sank back into the chair. My birth certificate lists my mother as Emily Donovan. I was told she died when I was very young. My adoptive parents changed my name from Catherine to Eliza when I was 3. Alexander went completely still, his eyes widening as they fixed on the spot where Eliza's fingers traced the crescent mark behind her ear. Catherine, he repeated, the name sounding foreign on his tongue. Emma called her daughter Katie. The silence that followed was deafening, filled with the impossible mathematics of coincidence and fate. This can't be real, Eliza finally said. The chances are astronomical. People don't just run into long-lost relatives on rainy streets. Alexander moved slowly, as if in a trance, to sit beside her. May I? He asked, gesturing toward her ear. With a slight nod, Eliza turned her head, pulling her hair aside to reveal the crescent-shaped birthmark. Alexander's fingers trembled as they hovered near it, not quite touching. Emma had the same mark, he said, his voice thick with emotion. Our grandmother did too. It's a Reed family trait, skipping generations. Eliza turned back to face him, seeing him with new eyes, not as benefactor or friend or even family by choice, but as blood, as uncle, as Lily's great-uncle. We need to be certain, she said pragmatically, though her racing heart belied her calm tone. DNA testing. Alexander nodded, still visibly processing the revelation. Of course. I'll arrange it tomorrow. If it's true, Eliza began, unable to complete the thought. If it's true, Alexander continued for her, then that day in the rain wasn't chance. It was Emma guiding me to you, to Lily. Eliza wasn't sure she believed in such cosmic interventions, but the alternative, pure coincidence, seemed equally implausible. All these months, she marveled. You've been helping me, caring for Lily, without knowing. Perhaps on some level, I did know, Alexander replied. There was something about you both from the beginning, a connection I couldn't explain. They sat in silence, the implications of their potential relationship unfurling between them. If confirmed, it would transform everything, again. Alexander wouldn't just be Eliza's employer or benefactor. He would be her uncle, her only living blood relative. Lily would have family beyond just her mother. There's a photo album, Alexander said suddenly, of Emma, of you, if you were indeed Catherine. Would you like to see it? Eliza nodded, and Alexander retrieved a leather-bound album from a locked drawer in his study. Together, they opened it, revealing images of a young woman with Alexander's gray eyes and a smile that Eliza recognized from her own mirror. And there, in faded photographs, was a baby with a distinctive crescent birthmark visible in a bath time picture. Tears filled Eliza's eyes as she traced the image of the mother she couldn't remember. She looks happy here. She was, before the addiction took hold, Alexander confirmed softly. She loved you more than anything. That never changed, even at her lowest points. Eliza turned the pages, absorbing this unexpected history, this connection to a past she had never fully known. When she reached the final photograph, Emma holding baby Catherine, both smiling at the camera, she couldn't contain the sob that escaped her. Alexander's arm tentatively wrapped around her shoulders, offering comfort. Whatever the DNA test shows, he said quietly, you and Lily are my family now. That won't change. The following week brought confirmation of what they both already knew in their hearts. The DNA test results showed without question that Eliza, born Catherine Reed, was indeed Alexander's niece, the daughter of his beloved sister Emma. The revelation transformed their already evolving relationship, cementing the family bonds that had been forming naturally for months. Alexander formally changed his will, naming Eliza and Lily as his heirs. The East Wing transfer proceeded as planned, though Eliza insisted on maintaining the connection between the two parts of the house rather than creating fully separate residences. 6 months after that rainy night when Alexander had impulsively offered his keys to a stranger, the Reed Foundation launched the Emma Reed Scholarship Program with Eliza as its director. At the gala celebrating its inauguration, Alexander took the stage with Eliza and Lily beside him. "Life rarely gives us second chances," he told the assembled crowd, his voice steady despite the emotion evident in his eyes. "But when it does, we must recognize them for the miracles they are." He looked at Eliza and Lily, his newfound family, before continuing, "My sister Emma made mistakes, as we all do. Her greatest regret was not being able to watch her daughter grow up. Tonight, I stand before you with that daughter, my niece Eliza, and her daughter Lily, living proof that sometimes the things we lose find their way back to us in the most unexpected ways." Eliza stepped forward to the microphone. "The scholarship program we're launching tonight will ensure that other young parents don't have to choose between their education and their children's well-being. It will provide the support I wish my mother had had, the support that might have changed both our lives." As applause filled the ballroom, Alexander whispered to Eliza, "Emma would be proud of you." "And of you," Eliza replied, "for not giving up the search, for stopping your car that night." Later that evening, as they walked through the garden behind their now shared home, Lily sleeping peacefully in Alexander's arms, Eliza reflected on the extraordinary chain of events that had brought them together. "Do you ever wonder," she asked, "what would have happened if you hadn't stopped that night? If you had just driven past like everyone else?" Alexander considered the question, looking down at the sleeping child he now knew to be his great niece. "I used to believe that life was what we made of it through hard work and smart decisions. Now I'm not so sure." He smiled at Eliza. "Perhaps some things are meant to be, no matter what paths we take to get there." Eliza thought of her mother, a woman she was only now coming to know through Alexander's stories and faded photographs. She thought of the rain that had driven her to that particular doorway on that particular night. She thought of Alexander's impulse to stop, to offer help when he had surely passed countless others in need before. "I think you might be right," she agreed, "though I'm glad we didn't have to take the longer path to find each other." As they returned to the warmth of the house that had become a true home for all three of them, the rain began again. A gentle shower that nourished the garden and washed the world clean, much as a single act of kindness had cleansed away years of loneliness and loss, replacing them with family, purpose, and love. In the nursery, as Alexander carefully placed Lily in her crib, Eliza noticed something she hadn't before: a small silver frame on the shelf above. Inside was the rain-spattered business card Alexander had handed her that first night, preserved as a reminder of how the smallest actions can sometimes lead to the greatest changes. "I kept the keys too," she admitted with a smile. "Good," Alexander replied. "They've always belonged to you anyway. You just needed to find your way back home."